Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Consult ROI podcast. I'm Danny Jessup, joined by Cameron Bodley, and we thank you for joining us. Hey, Cameron, what's up, man?
Just another day in paradise, you know?
Heck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Sun is shining and things are good. So we'll take it. Hey, so last week we talked about some mind mapping and kind of extracting some of that the things going on there of mapping out like what it is that you're trying to achieve, whether in your life or business there. And we touched on some of those different mapping elements overall, and maybe some graphics and things like that too. So if you haven't checked that out, go check out that episode as well. But that kind of led us to today's discussion in really looking at systems. What types of systems come to mind, when you say systems and things like that, like kind of objectively thinking about that? How do you have systems in place? What systems to develop? And what's the purpose of those systems? And I was reading something the other day where the person kind of went off for a minute. He's like, usually you don't have a people problem, you have a systems problem. And if you can dial in the systems problem, your people can follow that a heck of a lot easier than, changing who the human is behind that a lot of times, right? So if you've got that system, then we can kind of bolt on, your team that you need and kind of train them in the ways of that system. But with those systems, what's that system going to do? What type of outcomes are you looking from that system? How can it produce inside there? And so you've got systems that you got to go and dial in, and then throughout that process, you've got to implement on those systems or execute on those systems there. And that's ultimately to lead to what we've talked about previously of having those predictable results or those outcomes that you're looking for. So Cameron, when you think of systems, what are some things that initially come to mind to you?
So anytime I look at systems, I look at whatever the routine is that you're doing, because and I know that it can kind of have a negative dissonance or association with those systems, because subconsciously none of us really like being told what to do. None of us really care for those very strict routines and that, and a lot of us like to kind of have somewhat of a carefree lifestyle. But the problem is when you have carefree and spontaneous, you don't have consistency, and where you don't have consistency, you don't have results.
Yeah, right. I mean, just as you mentioned that, it kind of reminds me of like a kite, right? Like, hey, I want my kite to fly in the sky and I want it to go and do whatever it does. But if you just toss it up in the wind, it's going to just fall right to the ground. So it does need a little bit of that
one gust of wind, right? That carries it higher. But if you don't have gust of wind for another good time, it'll nosedive before the next one hits.
That's exactly right. Yep. And so it's like you've got to have, that wind, that resistance there, but you've also got to have that anchor so that that can kind of hold it in place so it can do what it's designed to do, right?
Absolutely. And so you can have some spontaneity, right? But there's still, it coincides within a routine, and people are like, well, how does that work? That makes zero sense whatsoever. You can't have spontaneity within a routine, especially if it's scheduled. You're like, well, yes, you can. It's just, I have a time allotted and I can do whatever the heck I want during that time. That is my personal time, whether I want to waste it playing video games or if I want to go out and ride motorcycles or whatever. It's me time, right? But the other times and structures is like, hey, this is, at the end of the day, that's where the mind map is so important. What do you want and why? What are you trying to accomplish? Or do you just want a lifestyle business? Do you want to build an empire? Do you want to build something that truly is a legacy that will impact numerous generations, even if it's something like therapy or like a counseling programs or other stuff? So what do you want that to look like? What does that image or big picture look like for you? And once you have that, then all of your actions need to coincide with that. It's just like if you wanted to lose weight, right? You can't just manifest it, speak the words, and magically lose the weight.
Right.
Work like that. I don't care what you say, what kind of voodoo nonsense you're into. It doesn't work like that. Unless your diet is air at that point, Yes, it's going to, because you're starving yourself.
That's like the episode of The Office where Michael Scott comes out and he declares bankruptcy, right? He comes out, just yells it to the entire office, "I declare bankruptcy!" And, the other one comes up to him, he's like, "Michael, that's not exactly how it works, right?" So if I'm declaring that I'm on a diet, I've got to, there's more to than just declaring that. That might be the start.
Well, the thing too is that when you only sporadically keep consistent with it, it doesn't. And granted, this starts a whole can of worms. I don't believe in 90% of mainstream diets out there. Okay. 99.9% of the ones out there are absolute trash. They don't work or anything. The key is really just count your calories and keep consistent with it. It's really as simple as that. You can eat whatever the hell you want. It just needs to be that. Like, you can literally eat a bag of candy each day, and if you're hitting your metrics, you might not be the healthiest because you're not hitting all your nutrition groups at that point, but you're still going to be freaking skinny. You'll
considering the amount of calories you want, right?
Yeah. Well, and the trick is like, there's other people that are like either bulimic or whatever else, or anorexic. They will have less than 1,000 or 1,200 calories. A human body, and that needs at least 1,400 to like sustain itself. When I am trying to build in that, because I'm a really scrawny guy, it's a struggle for me to do that. So I have to consistently work out, and I have to consistently eat almost double what I normally do in order for me to do that. And the thing is people that are overweight and everything, they're consistently, like, I can put away a ton of food. If you look at seeing me at a buffet, I can put away 30 plates of food, and that, to the point that they start looking at me and saying, "No, we should have put a cap on you."
I limited this guy.
Exactly. However, that doesn't happen often.
Right.
That doesn't happen very often and everything. So normally my calories are around 1,400 to 1,600 calories. If I want to bulk or get bigger than what I am, then usually that's around 2,400 calories or so. And the guys that are big, giant, bulking, those guys are around 3,000. But the guys that are getting just fat, they're not bulky, they're not muscle, and that they're just consistently eating that 3,000 calories, but they're not doing any workout, any way to burn it, any way to transition it from fat into muscle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the same thing. And it's like, well, why are we going in here for a stinking health lecture? Well, I hate to tell you, if you don't have your health, you don't have wealth, right?
Yeah. Ask any of these people.
You don't do it in your business, you won't have it. If you don't apply the principles in your life on this principle, the same way that you apply it to physical, mental, your business, everything, financially, fiscally, whatever you want to apply it to, it's a universal law. So the more you deny it, it doesn't change reality. It's like denying the sky's blue or whatever else. It doesn't serve you any good. You can deny it until your face turns blue. It's not going to change reality. It's not going to change your results. So first thing in changing your results is to come and get a reality check.
Sure. And sometimes like that's tough to hear, especially in our day and age, right? People don't like to be told, the truth or whatever that truth is, or that reality and things there. So don't want to be called out on that. And to kind of keep things, happy and whatnot. Not they're trying to ruin anybody's happiness or anything, but if you want that real dose of reality check, to have that real vulnerable look in the mirror, I mean, there's ways about going about doing that with an effort of continuous improvement.
Yeah. Well, and just like this, okay, if I want to be, again, if my goal is to be skinny, I need to keep to a consistent goal. And I'll be like, hey, I'm not going to take desserts out. I'm not going to do all these other realistic things. I might cut out some of the junk or processed food, because that just makes you feel like crap, and that you might get skinny, but if you feel like crap, it doesn't change anything, right? And so you'll say, okay, what can I do to at least get the core basics and everything to where I can still enjoy life. I can still do other stuff and do it. And sometimes that means like, okay, I'm going to work out more so I can eat more. Right?
Yep.
Because if you're burning what you're putting in, and that it's not as bad, but it don't expect as much results. Like that's the same thing. It's the same thing with business. If you put less effort in, expect less effort out or results out.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of
So,
why I have a steak with my salad. I mean, a salad with my steak. You know, it's just kind of balancing things out and maintaining that status quo while I'm having a great time, right?
well, that starts another can of worms, and that
All
most
right,
healthy is most people think, not especially with all the crap that's sprayed on them. But anyways, it's one of those things that like, and this is kind of where I believe personally, and this is my personal belief. Everyone can do what they want, but I believe like the more that you can try to sustain yourself, and that the better. So I will try to offset what I can from the grocery store because like I would have bad food allergies. And so, but I realized after a time or a period of time in my life that it wasn't the fruit themselves that I was allergic to, it was the pesticides and crap that they sprayed on. That was causing major issues. It's the same reason that people are allergic to like Red 40 or other things. And so for me, the ROI was I needed to at least prioritize some of my time or health to being able to offset my reliance on grocery stores and other things. And so growing some of my own vegetables, growing some of my own stuff, and that is healthier, that I can control what they do, what chemicals or other stuff is used on them, that did help. And I could go back to enjoying foods that I otherwise normally wouldn't.
sure. Yep.
So if you have something like that, and I'm not a doctor, so you can like obviously deal with.
This is not legal advice. We're just licensed to drive motorcycles and cars. Is that right?
Yeah, a few things, but there's again, this is one of those things. Like, look at if you want to enjoy something in life, just see kind of why, right? What is holding you back from it, and it might not be what you think it is, right? So for me, I always thought it was like the vegetables or other stuff themselves, as opposed to the other stuff that I could control, right? And you can source things from different people to do that to get the results that you want. It's the same thing, and that's a really kind of a stretch as far as metaphor. But the biggest thing is if that's on my mind map, that's a very simple way on how I was able to make it happen. People might not like it, and they're like, well, that's too much work. That's doing anything else. Well, I figured out a way to automate it, right? I figured out a way that once I plan it and everything, it's very minimal maintenance, the same amount of less time than it would take me to drive to the store. Otherwise, takes me to maintain something like that. So for me, it's actually a very great ROI. It's a great time ROI. It's a great health ROI. It's great everything else. And so when I put it on my mind map, I executed on that and I figured out a solution to accomplish it. So there is no excuses. No longer, once you have this system in place, you no longer have the privilege of making whiny excuses or victimizing yourself or anything else. Your life is 100%, 150%. Okay. I'm torn on anytime people say it more than 100%. I'm kind of torn even when I say it myself because like you can't have more than 100%. But you are 100% in control, okay, of every aspect of your life. You cannot blame anyone else at the end of the day, whether it is your actions or your lack of actions that is going to determine that.
And sometimes don't you think that like people need to be told or reminded that they're in control, right? Because I think that like a lot of times we just relied on, well, my boss tells me what to do or my schedule dictates whatever I do. Now, if you're managing that schedule, it's you at the end of the day choosing what that is, right? So it's you choosing where you're going to spend your time and it's you being in control. But I think a lot of times people have forgotten that they're the ones in control of that. They're just kind of letting life take control of that.
Well, I mean, how many people just show up because they're told to at a job, clock in at 9 and clock out at 5. They kind of zone out and clock out literally mentally and that the entire time. And then they wonder why the ROI is so poor. And they're like, well, I just need to show up to get a paycheck. Okay. There's 5 billion different ways to make a paycheck. There's 5 billion different ways to accomplish these different things. Why haven't you done them? Well, I just don't know how. Well, have you mind mapped? Have you figured out what you need to do to actually accomplish that? Have you even determined like what you actually want? Well, I don't know what I want. Okay, do you even know the industry? Do you even know what things that you would like to try? Have you tried anything? Because if you don't know what you want and you're not doing anything, you're not experimenting, you're not trying. Like when I had no clue what I wanted to do in life and everything, I did pretty much everything. Literally everything. I did everything from TSA, FBLA, FAA, which is so Future Business Leaders of America, TSA, which is Technology Student Association. And I actually ended up taking nationals for that. Basically, you get thrown a random bunch of crap and everything, and they say, hey, build something to solve this problem. And whoever does it best wins. So that's what my brain is wired to do. Socially, I had to work on that a lot. Social constructs, building up that and everything. And that was a priority, which is also why part of my thing is like, hey, this is what I want to be able to do in my life, at least, or do better. And so for me, it was like, hey, how can I understand sales? So I literally mind mapped at that time in my life to say, hey, I know that I don't grow in times of comfort. I'm already really comfortable at the technical stuff. I'm really comfortable at this stuff, but I really suck at sales. I suck at the conversations. I suck at this portion. So what can I do to be better at that? And what is the most uncomfortable thing I could do in that to inspire that growth and get comfortable with discomfort? And that was sales. It literally was doing a sales job for several years and that at the time in my life to try to understand why people made motions or buying decisions based off of emotion instead of logic, because that didn't make sense to me.
Right. And that was off camera for you, right? That's something that like just wasn't a natural fit for who you were. And so you immerse yourself into something that wasn't more natural or comfortable for you so that you could learn how to be comfortable with that discomfort. Is that right?
The problem is everybody wants to sit into their little fuzzy blanket and that curl up on a couch and do nothing, and that they aren't comfortable with discomfort. But the only way you build muscle or anything is literally discomfort at a gym and that consistent effort for that, right? So even for me, like I've looked at myself a few times and been like, hey, I am not nearly in the shape I used to be. I used to be ripped. I used to be everything else in that because at a certain point, I used to do farm work. I used to have a very physical job, right? There was a lot of physical elements in that, especially as a kid. And then when I was training in military, like I had to, like that was part of it. But when you do a desk job, like right now, where it's technical and other stuff, it just wasn't a priority. So I've had to kind of balance that. We're like, okay, this is a priority to the extent that I need to at least maintain my health, maintain some of my physical body in that. But I also needed to not overexert myself. So there is that balance in everything, right? Because I did overexert myself and tried to do a lot more weight than what I was built the discipline to do. And it's the same thing I think that people do in business, right? They try to just jump all into the deep end and that with entrepreneurship, which does work. Like I did that. So I'm not saying that it won't work, but what I am saying is that if you don't have certain key elements or tolerances or strengths built up, you're going to drown, and it's going to be an awful, miserable experience for you. And that doesn't mean, okay, well, I just won't try. It means actually build the skills to do that, right? So if you are trying to learn how to swim, you learn the techniques. You learn how to swim, like the different strokes and how to hold your breath and other stuff, right? In business and everything, it's, okay, here's what I need to learn as far as, okay, here's some financials and everything. And the key is because this is the thing I see time and time again, is people will get into that limbo of just absorbing all the information they can, and then they never frickin' execute.
Exactly, right? Yeah, yeah. I read on a post as a sales guru, Mike Weinberg, and someone's like, "Hey, your book's next on my list. I've been reading all these books and everything. I just love all your books." He said, "Yeah, but when are you going to stop and implement some of what you read? Thank you for reading my book, but when are you going to implement some of this information?" And yeah, everybody's just on this like consumption overload, and all they do, but then they don't take any action on that, right? Or rarely do they take action. They're not implementing those things. That's awesome. You still there, Cameron? Looks like the internet may have tripped. Still shows the call is being recorded.
Wow, I'm not sure what was going on there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I just suddenly got booted off the internet and everything, but I think they're working on the lines with Comcast and that, and so of course I'll get one of those messages saying, "Sorry, we're having a service interruption."
Of course, while we're recording and stuff. I don't know if mine stopped recording or not. The red light was still on, so we
Yeah,
might
I
still
don't
be
think
on
it
here.
did. I don't think it stopped.
All right,
But,
well, everybody's going to see a nice pause of me just kind of like looking at the screen going, "Oh, what's going on here?"
yeah, crap happens, right?
Yep,
Unfortunately, we can't control. And even as a tech, obviously, crap is still out. So there's certain things that are outside of our control,
yep,
um,
absolutely.
like the internet and that.
All that
Right,
fun
I don't
stuff.
have an issue. Yeah, but anywho's
So
that's
yeah,
why also we need to get a new. I really need to like just start a new company and that's a provider in this area, just so I can get a better circuit in this. Because they're trash. I don't like them, and they're unethical. And I don't like sitting on the phone anytime I have to deal with them just to tell them, "Oh yeah, we don't have an issue." And I'm like, I can literally see your box hanging off of the line right there. I'm pretty sure it's your issue. Oh, we apologize. Yeah. Okay.
That's fun.
Yeah. Anyways,
So, but yeah, we're talking about the systems and things like that. And do I know what I want to do, or do I know what I want to do? I want to touch a base on something that you talked about just a little bit ago of um, where you've tried several different things, and through that process, it seems like you found out a lot of things that you knew you didn't want or didn't enjoy doing, or realize that you might have had a gap there and wanted to improve that skill, like sales, for example. What was that process like for you in really trying to like taking that from that mind map then to realizing, you know what, I've got some gaps and I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and get to work, being comfortable and being uncomfortable, while I'm figuring out the things that I don't enjoy as much so that I can hone in on the things that I am actually pretty good at or I want to develop a skill in that area.
yeah. So At first, I didn't, because I didn't go into it with intention. I had that very juvenile mindset of, okay, when I find something I like, it'll just magically click and the stars will align and the heavens will open and, hallelujah, and you found your talent. Not how it works,
Mm.
unfortunately. But at the same time, so it wasn't until I started going into every single action with intention that I actually started getting intentional results out. So every single time I would go into it, I would literally evaluate and say, okay, what was it I liked about this? And what was it that I didn't like about it? Did I not like the people? Did I not like the culture? Did I not like the verbal associations? Did I not like the spiritual feel about it? Did I like the other stuff? Like, what did I not like and what did I like? And how can I get more of what I like and less of what I don't?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That, like, how do I do this and less of that? Like,
Yeah.
sounds pretty
So
simple.
when you narrow it down and everything and say, okay, because people will just associate, like, for example, they'll get a bad job and they will just assume that everything in that industry, everything in that job, everything associated with that is just bad. Which is frankly ignorant. But if you take it down and you break down every single thing and say, this is what I liked or didn't like, and there's also a very clear need that you have to have self accountability, meaning that you don't go into it with the mentality that, oh, hey, it's these people, these things, and everything else. Anytime you say it's this person or this person made me feel this way, you have just victimized yourself and you've taken power out of your hands and given it to somebody else,
Mm.
which means that the problem is actually you,
So once
not
again,
them.
you're in control, like you were saying earlier, right? You are in control.
Yeah. So the problem is you, not them. So the other, and that was kind of also a reality kick in the pants, because I realized, hey, there's these people that are just absolute douche canoes of the seven seas and everything else. So they're they're the problem, everything else. And yes, in a certain sense, you are justified and entitled to feel that way. However, there's a very famous saying, or, well, it's not famous, but it's a common quote that I love to use and I live my life by, which is to take offense when no offense was intended is to be a fool. To take offense when offense is intended is to be the greater fool, because you've just given them, again, power over your life.
Mm.
So automatically, never assume or take offense by anybody. And also, when you do that, it allows you to have more civil and more direct conversations and that with different people. So when you don't take offense to anything, and you step back and that, like, so somebody's screaming in my face, like, okay. So I'll use an example. Yesterday, no, not yesterday. It was Sunday. I had taken my mother out for Mom's Day and that.
Yeah.
We went to a restaurant. The waitress from day one, like literally the very moment, was giving me very much like the Karen attitude, very condescending, very derogatory. Like, I don't want to be here. This sucks and everything. I hate you and everyone.
Yeah. Mm.
And it's very easy, especially when you see that. And granted, even my first impulse was be like, to respond or report back to her the same way she was responding to me, which would have escalated the situation and made it a very nasty and very awkward situation, which a lot of people do. It's either that or they just ignore it and then they dismiss it. However, I always choose to look at it and say, okay, is there something that I'm not seeing? Is there something in their life in that? Because if somebody's responding with absolute anger over even a simple, minute, simple thing, it's not there's a famous thing that's called "It's Not the Nail."
Mm. Yeah. Yep.
Nail. I shared this with you.
Yeah. It's not about the nail.
So I actually, you know what? If you're on this, I want to. I'm gonna bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what other people have going on, right? And like, it just could have been that straw that broke that camel's back of like just that one thing, or it has nothing to do with you. It's just unfortunate that you're there to experience all that pent up, whatever they
You
had
are the
going on.
channel or the conduit of their relieving of that in a very
Yeah.
toxic way. It's the same way if your spouse comes home and is treating you like crap. It's not you typically. It's something that happened, something that's going on, something that's other stuff, and it's your responsibility to like not take it personally and redirect that. Because if you take it personally, then that's when offense and that's when insults start getting flinged, and throwing more shit in the fan does nothing but more spread or make a bigger mess.
Which I mean, could that be part of someone's system, right? So I've got to have a system so that when I do experience some sort of potential offense here, it's a if this then that. If I'm feeling this way, then do this to get away from it, remind myself or whatever, or react to it and have a horrible outcome, like you're saying.
Yeah. So, and the reason that I'm willing to bring this up and bring up this right now is because if you understand that it's not about the nail and it is like, that's how a lot of people see it and everything. And naturally, as men, we always want to fix things, right? We naturally want to,
Fixers.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of the time, we are, again, we are the woman in this scenario. A lot of the time, we're always looking at everything else as opposed to what the problem actually is. But when we interact with other people, we have to understand and listen to the fact that they haven't come to that conclusion yet. And you can sit there and listen all you want and everything, but until they have their own system in place and they're willing to take action and recognize it and everything, then it's not going to do any good. It's not going to be a productive conversation or anything else. So
They've
part
got
of
to be
that
ready.
is, yeah, absolutely. But this is very important to be self-accountable when we're going through this process. Okay. Are we saying anytime we make excuses in that it's not about the nail or ourselves, when we are in essence the very nail that is causing a lot of the problem or pain in our own life? So let me share this real quick. If you're on audio and that, I'll try to guide you through.
It's just, there's all this pressure.
I can hear it.
And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just
Don't.
So
It's not about the nail.
exactly. So as you can see, we do this ourselves in that. So if you're listening to the audio only and that, She essentially literally had a nail driven into her head and everything that he's trying to point out. She's complaining about all these aches and pains and all these things that she's experiencing, all these problems that keep showing up in her life, and she does not understand. And then she gets offended when somebody points it out. So if we stop taking offense by the critiques of others, and we also look at ourselves and say, are we being the nail in our own life? We then take power back into ourselves and be able to progress, right? Because if we do is want to be victimized and understood and everything else, unfortunately, things are not going to change for us. And that's just the harsh reality. So that is the key. And the other reason that having these processes and having these key foundational principles is so vital for us making progression in our life. It's so vital to even, again, some of the core things on anything that we want to execute upon our mind map. Because if we go on our mind map, right? If I say, okay, I want to be driving a Lamborghini in the next 5 years, but every single time I try to get a business deal or something like that, and they say, oh, that client was awful. They're just garbage. They don't know what they want. They're just an idiot or anything else. And that's how you approach almost every single interaction. What is the chance or likelihood that any of them are going to do business for you or help you accomplish your goal?
Yeah, they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you if you're not doing those things.
And some of those customers might have been derogatory, but the thing is you have to understand that when you're, especially if you're doing sales, you are calling them and inconveniencing them already. So theirs is a rational response to be irritated with it. You're already taking their time.
Yeah, they already don't like that you're reaching out.
Exactly. So how are you providing value, and what are you doing to solve their pain points and their issues to make their life easier? Until you recognize that and start being self-serving and just thinking of your Lamborghini and nobody else, then you will never get the Lamborghini.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that that ties nicely to, I think, the next episode that we'll talk about is how to maintain consistency with those results, because we're going to have those bad days. We're going to have those days where we're inconveniencing people. I'll take offense. They'll be offended, whatever the offense is. And if I don't have the right mind mapping established there, and then the right process in place to follow that has led to the systems that I need, then how am I going to go and maintain the work that I need to do to produce the results to get there to that Lambo that you're talking about when I'm having these bad days, so to speak? How do I kind of go and do that work despite, so that I can have more ups than downs throughout that journey, right?
Absolutely. So, and granted, this is something that we are with the mastermind that we're launching. Everyone that wants to do this, we actually do a full in-depth breakdown for you as an individual. We actually help guide you through it, because it's very easy to get stuck inside your own head. And sometimes it's great to have other people that are in the same industry that are trying to accomplish the same goals we are, whether it's bettering our career, building our business, etc. Or just in general, having that mindset of self-improvement and being willing to look at it from getting a different set of perspectives or eyes. And so in those masterminds, we do break that down and we spin ideas off and say, okay, here's what you're trying to do. This is what they've been doing. This is what we've tried. What's your ideas on what worked, what didn't work, and how we can better that? How can we improve the processes and so forth? And just being able to get out of your head, and that, I think, provides a substantial amount of clarity and ability to progress. It's just like, for example, when we sit back and we look at a solution and we get frustrated and we spend up all night and trying to solve this problem, and then we finally just decide, you know what, we're just going to crash or whatever, we'll go to sleep and wake up, and then wake up with fresh eyes, with mindset and everything. Somebody says something and it triggers, and you're like, boom, and it clicks, and everything falls into place. It's the same thing. It's getting it out of your head, getting a pair of fresh eyes, and then gaining a new perspective from other people that have done that. So if you don't have that, that is something that you can definitely message us at. You can go to connect@consultroi.com. You can email that if you don't have that or haven't already. You can also email either of us personally, which is Danny@DannySentMe.com. And he's happy to answer some of those questions as well on that. But either way, if you, and I'm not saying that you have to use ours or anybody else, right? We just like-minded individuals that are continually add value, that will add to the group, that have the same mindsets and that, because collectively, again, the tide raises all ships together. So the more people we have, the bigger the lake is, the more ships we can rise. That's how it works.
Absolutely.
So if you don't want that, though, find a local group, find a local mastermind, find other like-minded individuals that are trying to improve. But the reality is I know, at least for me, is I didn't really have enough people locally that were in the same headspace to make a change. And it was very helpful for me to get other people that were in similar industries, that were across the globe, that I could collaborate with. Because that's really what gave the perspective and change. And that will actually help you execute also on your mind mapping process. But the biggest key in building those systems and processes is be able to change your mindset to, again, execute on it, have like-minded, and have other people that will provide, that will gain or give you other perspectives. It's the same reason that I don't hire people that are an echo chamber. I hire people that are going to give me a different perspective that I would have never thought of. And I choose not to take offense, even though if they have drastically different goals or ideas or anything else than I do. So when they have drastically different ideas and everything, it's very easy to get offended, whether it's politically or religiously or anything else.
Sure.
But when we choose not to, and we choose to look at it, it's like, okay, their life experience gains them a whole perspective that I would have otherwise never, ever, ever had access to. So in fact, those people are valued and cherished because now they can look at it and say, okay, here's what I would do. And maybe it's a stupid idea. Maybe they have a very emotional brain and you have a very logical brain, and you can say, well, that wouldn't work because of X, Y, and Z. But you're like, oh, wait, we can actually take some of that emotional connect and we can bundle that with the logical, like, hey, here's the logical steps in the sales process or something, and boom, there's the solution.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes you can't get there until you go through some of those processes. So absolutely.
Exactly. So anyways, let's I think next week in that it's more, we'll have to look at kind of what would be the best in that for, but I think it would actually be, I'm hoping that we can get another expert on here soon too. We're starting to incorporate those again into some of our podcasts. I know we've had that in the past. We've had different industry leaders. We've had different thought leaders and other things on the podcast before. I'm hoping to incorporate some of that again and bring that back. We'll see what happens. I think a lot of this, though, is just the fundamentals that we really need to hammer in, because until you have those and you actually are executing on them in your own life, it's going to be very difficult to accomplish anything. So if anything, get out of this podcast, get your damn mind map done, get out of your own head, and start executing. So catch you on the next podcast.
Thanks, everyone.